Uncovering Secrets. Chapter 1. Brilliance Awakened. Cassandra Blackwood had it all: wealth, beauty, a thriving company, until one night changed everything. How does a woman like Cassandra Blackwood lose everything in a single night? Let's start at the beginning. The school bell rang and students poured from the classrooms. Cassandra and her best friend, Chloe Lang, trailed behind, their chatter effortless. I'm not lying, Chloe, I seriously thought it was a romantic comedy. But when the moans got louder and my mother knocked on my door, I realized with horror that it was porn. Chloe doubled over, laughter spilling past tears. Cassandra's mortified glare only made her laugh harder. She bumped Cassandra's shoulder in solidarity, and together they joined the chorus of muffled giggles around them. Come on, virgin, let's go, Chloe said, looping her arm through Cassandra's. They walked away, the echo of laughter trailing behind them. Friends since kindergarten, seniors in their last week before graduation, Cassandra and Chloe were about to diverge on separate paths for university. At Cassandra's Jeep, they drove home in comfortable silence, the hum of the engine undercutting the lingering mirth of the day. That evening, seated at the dinner table with her mother and younger sister, Cassandra braced herself. She knew the movie incident would come up. Her mother's voice was low, laughter threading each word. Did you enjoy your movie last night, darling? Cassandra felt her face heat. Her sister nearly choked on her drink, snorting into laughter, while Cassandra's narrowed gaze tried to rein in the moment. Anyone can make a mistake, her mother said, still chuckling. Hushed whispers doesn't sound like porn. The Blackwood family thrived on closeness and laughter. Emily Blackwood, widowed 10 years prior, had raised her daughters with devotion, promising a home brimming with love and respect. Tonight, that warmth carried through the table, echoing as dishes were cleared and laughter subsided. At her door, Cassandra spoke softly to Brianna. Promise me you'll always make sure Mom's okay when I leave next year. Brianna nodded. Cassandra smiled and stepped inside her room, taking one last deep breath in the sanctuary that had held her childhood. Chapter 2. New Ventures. Summer flu. Cassandra packed the last of her belongings, glancing at Brianna sprawled on her bed. Senior year awaited her sister, and Cassandra knew she would thrive. Just don't overthink everything, Bri. You'll be a star this year, Cassandra said, folding a hoodie. Brianna smiled. I know, Cass, but it'll be lonely without you. They hugged tightly, a bond unbroken by distance. Their mother appeared. Ready, darling? We need to leave before dark. 2 hours later, they arrived at the University of New Haven. Cassandra's dream of forensic science awaited. After tearful goodbyes, she stepped into her single dorm room, inhaling the unfamiliar mix of new carpet, fresh paint, and possibilities. University life suited her. Friendships formed easily, assignments were meticulous, grades topped the class. For years later, she accepted her bachelor's degree, then moved seamlessly into a master's program. 6 years passed. Cassandra stood on a podium, degrees in hand, flashes from cameras blinding her briefly. Her mother and sister, now a Johns Hopkins student, beamed with pride. An offer from Quantico followed. She worked with the CSI team for 3 years, then went solo. Cassandra founded her own company, a private forensic powerhouse, trusted by the FBI and CIA alike. Cold cases were solved, criminals apprehended, and her name became synonymous with brilliance and danger. 7 years later, she entered a gala wearing emerald silk that clung to every curve. Auburn hair pinned elegantly, Louboutins clicking like a metronome on marble. Her eyes scanned the room until they found Chloe. Cass, wonderful to see you. Let me introduce you. Cassandra sipped champagne, letting her gaze wander. Then a hush fell. A chill brushed across the room. She turned to the entrance and froze. Chapter 3. Connections will find you. Adelina Berisha, of Albanian descent, military veteran turned formidable businesswoman, glided into the gala. Cream silk hugged her sculpted body, flanked by 2 bodyguards. Eyes shifted, whispers formed. Her gaze settled on Cassandra. A tilt of the head, a pause, a smile meant only for her. I didn't expect you at these events, Miss Blackwood. Her voice flowed like silk, low and smooth. Cassandra's mouth opened, then closed. Do I know you? Not yet. But I know you, Adelina replied, stepping back, leaving Cassandra with the faint trace of citrus perfume and an ache of intrigue. Cassandra returned to Chloe, trying to forget storm-gray eyes and sharp features. Who is she? She whispered. Chloe's response was a warning. Stay away, Cass. That's Adelina Barisha. Dangerous. Off limits. Cassandra smirked, undeterred. I'm not interested. Just curious. She glanced up the name on her phone. After reading, she exhaled and tucked the device away. I'm taking an early night, Chloe. Text you tomorrow. Outside, the city air hit her, sharp and clean. Cassandra hailed a taxi, unaware that the encounter had already marked the start of a collision she could not avoid. Chapter 4. Crime Scene of the Heart. The bell above the coffee shop door jingled as Cassandra stepped inside. The place was packed, students and professionals vying for space. Her eyes scanned the room until she spotted an empty table at the far end. She made her way forward, weaving through the crowd. Ordering a matcha, she sank into the chair and opened her laptop. Soon, she was oblivious to the clamor around her. A shadow fell over her table. Mind if I join? A low, measured voice cut through the noise. Cassandra looked up. Adelina Barisha stood there, dressed in black, slacks hanging just right over sculpted hips, a fitted tank, and a leather jacket that seemed to know her body intimately. Cassandra scanned the rest of the cafe. No other tables were open. She gestured to the chair across from her, and Adelina slid into it with deliberate grace. I didn't expect Cassandra Blackwood in coffee shops, Adelina purred. Cassandra tilted her head. Adelina Barisha, notorious for assumptions, aren't we? A laugh, soft and melodic, echoed. A few patrons glanced up. Adelina leaned in slightly, her voice a caress. Spunk. I like it. Before Cassandra could reply, her phone buzzed. She packed her laptop quickly. Let's not make this a habit, Miss Barisha. She walked out, leaving Adelina smiling in her wake. Outside, Cassandra slipped into the waiting car. Before the driver pulled away, she looked back at the cafe and whispered, You're so screwed, Blackwood. Adelina Barisha is trouble. Back at Elementrix, the glass tower gleamed under the morning sun. Cassandra entered the lobby, greeted by her assistant, Jonah. We found the missing piece, Miss Blackwood, he said, barely containing his excitement. Cassandra took the tablet, scanning the data. Did you verify it? Triple-checked. Already sent to Marcus for confirmation, Jonah replied. 2 years ago, Cassandra had been called to a chilling crime scene, a victim's body desecrated, identification impossible. Even with the FBI's missing persons unit, they had hit a dead end. Now, the jaws and feet had surfaced in a small Mexican village. She ran the program, typing with feverish precision. The screens pinged. The words match found flashed across every monitor. Cassandra leaned forward, breath catching. Agrin Barisha. Her stomach dropped. Blood ran cold. Shit, she whispered. Chapter 5. The Missing Link. Cassandra waited in the quiet hum of her office, fingers folding and unfolding around a coffee she hadn't tasted. The data had been sent to the FBI. Marcus had acknowledged receipt. All that remained was the human piece, the sister. The woman whose life had been cleaved in two by a name on a screen. The elevator chimed. She straightened, smoothed the lapel of her jacket, and turned her face toward the door. Adelina stepped out like a contained storm, poise in every line, grief braided with a calm that didn't reach her eyes. She moved with the economy of someone who'd once taken orders under fire and now gave them. Cassandra rose, holding the tablet like a delicate instrument. Miss Barisha, she began, voice steady at the edges. I have the results. There was a professionalism in her that had kept her alive through more than one hostel room. I matched the remains. Adelina did not sit. She crossed to Cassandra's desk and took the tablet without a tremor. Her eyes moved over the screen with the cool efficiency of someone trained to read threats and facts at the same glance. Show me, she said simply. Cassandra watched her face as Adelina scrolled, The dental records cued, DNA markers aligning, the bolded name, Agrin Barisha, staring back at them. For a breath there was nothing between them but the glow of the tablet. Adelina's joy tightened. Not sorrow, Cassandra realized, but the weight of recognition settling into a new shape. She looked up slowly. How certain? Her voice didn't ask for reassurance so much as for the language of certainty, proof to hold against disbelief. Within margin, Cassandra said. The dental chart, mitochondrial markers, they matched the fragments recovered in Mexico and the other pieces. Cross-checked with the missing persons registry. We ran secondary confirmations at the lab. Marcus reviewed it. This isn't a mistake. Adelina let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a small, sharp bark of grief. 2 years, she said. 2 years of not knowing. Her fingers brushed the tablet as if to steady herself. You found him, then. You did the thing you do. Cassandra felt the curious tilt between pride and culpability, the way her competence could be a kindness to some and a threat to others. I did what was possible, she said. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. Adelina's voice cut the softness like a blade. You did something almost no one else could. You gave me a name. She paused, the quiet of it expanding. How did you find the link now? Cassandra explained, steady and concise. The bones recovered in the village, genetic markers that tied distant pieces together, the small oversight in the killer's method, an overlooked fragment that finally spoke. She watched Adelina process each technical phrase, saw the facts land like blows, and then settle into a plan. They spoke then in the muted language of people who used strategy to survive grief. Adelina asked about investigative threads, possible suspects, known enemies, the list of associates Agrin had. Cassandra answered bluntly. Agrin had enemies. He traveled in circles that left traces. There were violent men, territorial disagreements, and darker things that didn't fit cleanly into news columns. Did you hand this to the Bureau? Adelina asked. Yes. Marcus has the case. Cassandra folded her hands. I'll cooperate with anything you need. Adelina's gaze softened for the barest moment. You should be careful, she said. The warning was not melodrama. It was a fact stated in measured tones. When you put people behind bars, you make enemies. Not everyone will be satisfied by the law. Cassandra nodded. It was a truth she carried like a second skin. She had built a career on turning violent acts into answers. Answers angered the people that had wanted silence. She'd felt that shadow at the edge of a courtroom more than once. They lapsed into a silence that was not empty. The room held the weight of names and evidence, and the invisible claws that had dragged a family into ruin. Adelina closed the tablet and handed it back. Thank you, she said. She did not offer a smile. Gratitude found its shape elsewhere. For the work. For the truth. Cassandra felt, very clearly, the fragile human currency of the moment. They were strangers made intimate by data and grief, 2 women on opposite sides of the same wound. If there's anything Cassandra began, then stopped. There are offers you cannot make without softening yourself, she thought, and she wasn't sure she wanted to. Adelina surprised her with a half bow of the head. When this is over, perhaps a drink, she offered. A private one. Not a gala or a courtroom. Just 2 people. Cassandra's throat tightened around something that was not quite professional curiosity. Yes. When it's over. They stood. The room felt suddenly smaller, or perhaps it was their proximity that had expanded the space between them. Adelina's presence was an odd gravity Cassandra found she didn't want to test, and yet felt compelled to orbit. They parted with the civility of people who had shared a war zone rather than a boardroom. Adelina moved like a woman who had chosen a path and was already walking it. Cassandra returned to her desk, the lab's sterile logic settling back into her bones. As Adelina left, she paused at the door. Be careful, she said again, but this time it carried something else, ownership, perhaps, or a promise. People get very angry when you take their silence. Cassandra forced a casual nod. I know. Adelina disappeared down the hallway, and for a long moment Cassandra watched the doorway as if the act of watching could make a different future. Then she turned back to the screen, the facts, the files, and dove into the small tasks that kept panic from becoming paralysis. A few days later, the calm would fracture. Plans made in the hush between grief and action would begin to move. Cassandra could not know the shape of the first blow, only that the warning had been given and the world, so precise under her hands, was about to tilt. Chapter 6. The Hunt Begins. Cassandra sat at her desk long after the office lights had dimmed, the hum of the air conditioning mingling with the quiet tap of her keyboard. The case files on Agron Berisha sprawled across her monitor, tabs layered with witness statements, financial records, and the tiniest overlooked details that, together, formed a pattern no one had noticed before. Her eyes were sharp, methodical, scanning every line of code, every footnote, every record. Agron had been found finally, but the deeper she dug, the more she realized something uncomfortable. He was never supposed to be found. Every connection she uncovered led to more names, more power, more danger. Albanian crime networks, old vendettas, a web of violence that extended far beyond what the FBI had touched. Cassandra's fingers hovered over the mouse as she processed a transfer, large sums of cash, routed through offshore accounts, all linked to Agron's name. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't just a murder, it was a statement. And someone wanted it buried. Permanently. A faint vibration on her phone drew her attention. A number she didn't recognize flashed. She swiped it away, but a cold shiver ran down her spine. Something primal whispered that she had been seen. She tried to ignore it, to tell herself the paranoia was the price of digging too deep into dangerous territory. But the world felt different that evening. Shadows stretched longer, cars lingered too long outside the building, and the reflection of movement in the glass across the street seemed deliberate. She called Jonah, her assistant, over the secure line. Any unusual activity? Vehicles, people you don't know near the building. No, Cass. Everything's quiet, he replied, but she could hear the tension in his voice. Her own instincts whispered otherwise. She shut down her computer and headed for the elevator, eyes scanning the lobby. Empty. Silent. Nothing seemed out of place. Yet the hairs on her neck prickled as she stepped outside into the cool night air. Her Jeep was there, exactly where she'd parked it. But something was off, a shadow shifting at the corner of the lot, too deliberate to be accidental. Cassandra's pulse hit a higher gear. She slowed, pretending to check her phone, her hand hovering near her keys. The figure didn't move, didn't approach, didn't retreat. Just waited. And then it was gone. Cassandra exhaled sharply, shaking off the unease. She told herself it was nothing. She was trained for danger, for unpredictability. She had survived threats in labs, crime scenes, and courtrooms. She had walked into the darkest spaces of humanity and emerged with answers. Still, the feeling lingered, an itch she could not scratch. Someone was watching. Someone who didn't want her to find anything further. And she had only just begun. Back at her apartment, she locked the door behind her and checked the blinds. Every reflective surface, every dark corner, seemed to hold a hidden gaze. She poured herself a drink, tried to settle her racing mind. But sleep would not come. Her thoughts circled. Agron's death, the missing pieces, the whispers in coded ledgers. Each discovery pulled her deeper into a network of violence, and with each revelation, the shadows at the edge of her life seemed to creep closer. She ran through contingencies, her security protocols, hidden cameras, emergency contacts. She noted the unusual things she'd seen over the last few days, the car at the corner, the shift in the streetlight's reflections, a man watching her exit the office. Somewhere deep inside, a chill settled. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was a hunt. And Cassandra Blackwood, the brilliant forensic analyst, the woman who had put countless criminals behind bars, was now the prey. And the hunt had only just begun. Chapter 7. Strangled Light. The rain had started by the time Cassandra left her apartment the next evening, a thin drizzle that made the streets shine like black glass. She moved briskly, hood up, shoulders tight, mind replaying the threads of Agron Berisha's death. Her instincts screamed, but she pushed the warning down. She had done this before, risk assessed, protocols in place. She could handle it. She was wrong. A van glided alongside her, slowing to match her pace. She caught the shadow in her peripheral vision, but before she could react, a gloved hand clamped over her mouth. A second hand shoved her into the van. Pain exploded across her ribs as she hit the floor. She kicked, elbowed, but the attackers were methodical, professional. Within seconds, she was bound, blindfolded, and dragged into the darkness. Her breaths came sharp, shallow, controlled, her mind racing, scanning, cataloging every detail. The vehicle moved. Fast. Jerking. Her head thumped against the metal floor with every turn. She tried to focus, listening to the rhythm of the tires, the engine, the occasional murmur of her captors. Names, accents, Albanian. Her pulse quickened. She had brushed against shadows like these in the field, but never as the hunted. When the van finally stopped, they yanked her out. The air was cold, damp, metallic. Chains rattled. The blindfold came off, just a crack enough to let her glimpse a dimly lit room, concrete walls, a single overhead bulb swinging slightly. Her wrists burned where they were tied, her legs scraped. She tasted blood, bit her lip, and blinked away the fog. Her mind fired through possibilities. Windows? Doors? Weak locks? Any environmental cues? Her training took over, carving clarity from chaos. Hours, or maybe it was minutes, passed. Pain pressed against her every nerve. Her captors didn't speak much, just sharp commands, movements calculated to keep her off balance, fearful, obedient. They wanted her alive, just enough to break her. She refused. Cassandra imagined every method she knew: leverage, pressure points, distractions. She tested her restraints subtly, straining, pulling, twisting. Each small movement cataloged in her mind: rope fibers, knot types, metal weak points. Her body screamed in protest, her resolve sharpened. Then came the questioning. Not about her work, not about Agron, about her. A low, methodical interrogation: who she worked with, the people who might come for her, the connections she had forged. Her lips pressed into a line. She gave nothing but calm misdirection, carefully calculated lies buried in truth. Fear curled around her chest like a living thing. She felt the bruises bloom, the welts forming. Her captors didn't need to speak threats, they existed in the silence, the deliberate absence of kindness. And still, her mind never stopped. Cassandra's survival instincts were forensic in nature: observe, hypothesize, plan. The room, the guards' rotations, the creak of the floorboards, every detail mattered. The first real opportunity came in a moment no one expected. A guard shifted too far, a key left carelessly in reach. Her fingers brushed it, only barely, but the connection sparked hope. She memorized its shape, its weight, and waited. Pain and exhaustion blurred the hours, but she never let panic win. She whispered calculations to herself, ran scenarios through her mind, every exit, every distraction, every plausible strike. She would not be buried in darkness, she would not be erased. And somewhere in the shadow of it all, Cassandra remembered one number. The only number she trusted: Adelina Berisha. She held it in her memory like a lifeline. When the chance came, she would reach it, no matter the cost. Now she is lying on the cold floor, bruised and beaten, chains biting into her wrists, mind alive and whirring, heart pounding, and the faintest spark of hope in her chest. She will get to a phone. She will call. And help is coming. Chapter 8: Fractured Survival. Cassandra's world was pain and shadow. Every nerve screamed, every bruise throbbed, yet her mind moved faster than her battered body could keep pace. She had been left alone, restrained in that cold, sterile room, a cage of concrete and steel, devoid of mercy. The guards had grown careless. The small victories of her sharp eyes and sharper mind revealed themselves in tiny cracks: a chain hook loose, a door slightly ajar, the rhythm of their patrols. Cassandra tested each possibility: minute movements, muscles aching, heart pounding. Her fingers scraped along the rope that bound her wrists. Slowly, carefully. Patience was her weapon. A flick here, a twist there. The ropes frayed, fibers giving under her relentless tug. Each small success filled her with a shivering hope. She dragged herself across the floor, bruises screaming with every inch. Her back and side ached, ribs protesting, but she forced herself to keep moving. Eyes scanned the shadows. She memorized every detail: a phone in the corner of a forgotten desk, a hallway with a flickering bulb, a ventilation grate just wide enough to slip a hand through. Minutes stretched into hours, or was it minutes? Time had no meaning in fear. Only survival mattered. A sound, a misstep from a guard, set her pulse into overdrive. She froze, heart hammering, every muscle coiled. Then she saw it, a phone, old and dusty, sitting like a forgotten promise on a desk. Cassandra forced herself toward it, scraping along the concrete, every nerve screaming. She grabbed the receiver, felt the cord, pressed her bruised lips to it. And she remembered, the one number she had memorized, the one person who could move mountains to find her. Her fingers shook as she dialed. The first ring echoed like a gunshot in the silence. The second, longer, more deliberate, rattled her chest. Third, and then a calm, commanding voice cut through the fear. "I know. Hold on, Cass. I'm coming." Her breath hitched. Relief, adrenaline, and exhaustion collided in a storm that made her knees buckle. She sank to the floor, pressing the receiver to her chest, tears of pain and gratitude mingling. Behind the line, she could hear the subtle command: quiet, control, power. Adelina's army was mobilizing. Cassandra didn't know how long she had been alone, how close the danger still lurked, but for the first time in hours, she allowed herself a flicker of hope. Her body ached, her mind was raw, yet she felt the fire reignite. She had survived this far. She would survive what came next. And she knew, deep down, that when Adelina arrived, the hunters would become the hunted. But first, she had to hold on. The room seemed darker, colder, heavier than ever, yet the faintest whisper of a promise lingered in the air. Help was coming. And Cassandra Blackwood was not done yet. Chapter 9: Fire and Shadows. The sound of engines, distant but deliberate, shook the air outside the concrete walls. Cassandra's heart leapt, muscles tensing. She had been holding the phone like a lifeline, counting the seconds, praying the lines stayed open. And then the first movement. A shadow at the doorway, swift, silent, impossibly precise. Adelina. She moved like a predator, controlled, lethal, flanked by two others whose presence exuded quiet menace. Behind them, the faint hum of vehicles and more footsteps told Cassandra the army she had trusted had arrived. "You okay, Cass?" Adelina's voice cut through the darkness, calm yet commanding. Cassandra's chest tightened with relief, pain, and adrenaline merging into a dizzying cocktail. I'm fine," Cassandra croaked, but Adelina didn't need words. With fluid motion, the restraints were gone, and hands, strong, careful, lifted her to her feet. Outside, the vehicles roared. Cassandra's senses ignited: the cold wind, the gleam of black SUVs, the muted lights of armored bodies moving with military precision. Her captors appeared, alerted by the noise, and then chaos. Adelina's team moved with lethal efficiency. Cassandra barely noticed the fight around her, her mind still a haze of pain, shock, and gratitude. But one thing she did notice: her enemies were no match for Adelina's planning, her foresight, her unrelenting force. Minutes later, they were gone from the warehouse, the city streets swallowing them, rain washing away the night's terror. Cassandra, seated in the back of an SUV, allowed herself to exhale fully for the first time in what felt like an eternity. "You were reckless," Adelina said softly, voice almost affectionate, but her eyes remained steel. "Digging into Agron was dangerous. But I know you, Cass. You can't help yourself. And that's why I came." Cassandra, still trembling, let herself lean back. I didn't know who else to call," she admitted. Pain throbbed in her side, bruises painting her skin in angry purple, but the relief was overwhelming. "I knew you would come." Adelina's expression softened, just for a heartbeat. "I always come, Cass. But next time, let me know before you wander into fire." The aftermath was a blur of recovery, security assessments, and whispered briefings. Cassandra's wounds were tended to, but the deeper scars, shaken trust, the realization of how close she had come to being erased, lingered. Yet even as she rested, her mind ticked. Agron's death was no isolated event. The Berisha family had layers: politics, revenge, old vendettas, and now Cassandra was caught in their orbit, whether she liked it or not. Every case file, every note, every piece of evidence became a puzzle she had to navigate carefully, because enemies she had never known existed were now awake to her brilliance and hungry to silence her. And still, Cassandra Blackwood would not be silent. Because if danger lurked, if fire threatened to consume her, she would burn brighter than ever. Adelina's presence was reassurance, a shield against the darkness. But Cassandra knew the truth of her world now. Trust was precious, enemies were patient, and her life, fragile as it seemed, was a blade waiting to strike back. She closed her eyes, letting the adrenaline ebb, letting herself feel, just for a moment, the safety that hadn't existed in hours. Tomorrow, the hunt would continue. But tonight, she survived. And surviving was just the beginning. Chapter 10: Shadows of the Surname. Cassandra's apartment smelled faintly of antiseptic and rain, a reminder of the night that had almost ended her life. Bruises faded slowly, but her mind was sharper than ever, hunger for the truth undiminished. She stared at the files sprawled across her desk. The Berisha name had been whispered to her before, the Albanian connections, old crime families, vendettas, but she hadn't understood the depth, the reach, the gravity of what she was stepping into. And Adelina. Adelina was more than a woman with a sharp edge and a deadly presence. She was a force in a world Cassandra had barely glimpsed. Curiosity and survival instinct pushed Cassandra further. She began tracing the Berisha family lineage, piecing together decades of connections. Each thread she followed was dark, twisted, and unnervingly elegant. Wealth, influence, politics, and whispers of violence intertwined like ivy. But Adelina's personal record, the guerrilla fighter past, the military strategy, the honor in her operations, began to emerge as something distinct. It was then Cassandra realized Adelina had earned her name through strength, intelligence, and service, not by following the shadows of her family. But perception is dangerous. Everyone assumed the Berisha name carried guilt, and in Cassandra's mind, every assumption had a price. As Cassandra dug, she began to understand a truth she couldn't ignore. She had crossed into Adelina's world. And in that world, even curiosity could be deadly. Chapter 11: Lines of Trust. Adelina arrived unannounced, but Cassandra was ready. Her apartment was secured, but more importantly, Cassandra was awake to the gravity of their shared reality. "You're digging," Adelina said, voice low, eyes scanning the files. "And I won't lie, this is a dangerous line." "I need to understand," Cassandra replied firmly. Your family, Agron, the network. I can't work in a world I don't fully see." Adelina nodded slowly, the weight of her past visible in her eyes. "I wasn't part of the family's crimes. I was in the guerrilla forces, fighting for survival and freedom in a different war. But now, by name alone, people assume what they want. That's why I protect you, Cass. That's why I fight with you." Cassandra leaned back, studying the woman who had literally saved her life. She understood now Adelina's domain was as dangerous as it was precise, and yet, beneath the lethal control, there was honor and loyalty. "Then prove it," Cassandra said, voice low. "Not to me, necessarily, but to the world. Show me that your name doesn't define your morality. Show me that you are an ally I can trust, completely." A faint smile touched Adelina's lips, almost imperceptible. "I will. And in this world, Cass, trust is all we have left. But remember, every move we make will be watched. Every action leaves a mark. This is not a game." Cassandra exhaled, knowing the gravity of her position. She was brilliant, trained, fearless, but now she understood the stakes. The Berisha world was not just danger, it was strategy, history, and fire, and she was standing at its center. Chapter 12. Web of Shadows. Cassandra's apartment smelled faintly of old paper and brewed coffee, a silent testament to the long nights she had spent in focus and solitude. The rain outside whispered against the windows, a soft drumbeat to her thoughts. She had to move carefully. Adelina's presence was protective, yes, but the fewer people who knew she was actively hunting Agron's killers, the better. The files on Agron were spread across her desk: photographs, financial records, travel logs, and obscure connections she had painstakingly traced back over months. Every anomaly, every loose thread, had been catalogued. Every piece was a potential clue to the men who had buried him or tried to. Her phone buzzed briefly. A news alert. A low-level syndicate figure tied to the Berisha family had been spotted in the city. Cassandra didn't flinch. This was the kind of lead she lived for. Quietly, methodically, she pulled records, traced communications, cross-referenced locations. She worked late into the night, alternating between the analytical and the instinctive, tracing each move as if she were reconstructing the very crime itself. Her heart thrummed with the thrill she knew all too well. She was closing in. But shadows followed her everywhere. A knock on the door, a flash of movement in the window reflection. Her senses were taut. She had been beaten, trapped, left for dead. She would not let that happen again. Every sound was noted, every pattern memorized. She moved like a ghost through her own apartment, every step silent, every breath controlled. Days passed. Cassandra met Adelina for routine briefings, business updates, and casual dinners. All the while, she hid her private investigations. Her face remained calm, her words measured, but her mind never stopped working, piecing together Agron's final days. Then, a breakthrough. A ledger buried in an offshore account, transfers that didn't add up, a connection to a man who had vanished from public records, but whose signature had touched every dirty deal Agron had tried to expose. Cassandra's pulse quickened. She had found proof. But the weight of it pressed down on her. She couldn't act too quickly. Agron's killers were dangerous, precise, and patient. Any slip, any exposure, and the fragile web she had spun could unravel. She had to be smarter, faster, invisible. Leaning back in her chair, rubbing the bridge of her nose, Cassandra whispered to herself, "You thought you could bury him, but you underestimated me." Outside, the rain began to fade, the first glimmers of dawn reflecting off the wet streets. Cassandra allowed herself a small breath, a tiny spark of triumph, but the fire in her gut reminded her the war was far from over. The killers were still out there, and she would find them, even if it meant walking alone through fire and shadow. Chapter 13. The Hunter Becomes the Hunted. Cassandra had always been precise. Every move calculated, every risk measured. But as she traced the ledger and the chain of transactions tied to Agron's killers, a shadow loomed larger than she had anticipated. It started with small things: a car parked too long outside her apartment, a blurred figure in the reflection of her office window, a missed phone call with no voicemail. She brushed them off at first, convincing herself it was paranoia. But deep down, she knew better. Her mind raced as she packed her laptop into its secure case, hiding the real findings in an encrypted drive only she could access. She had to be careful. Any exposure, even to Adelina, could compromise the operation. She had to move silently, like she always did. Walking home late one night, the streets empty save for the distant hum of traffic, Cassandra sensed them before she saw them. Two men, silhouettes against the streetlight, moving deliberately toward her. Every instinct screamed danger. She broke into a jog, weaving through alleyways, heart hammering. But these weren't amateurs. They knew her patterns. They had studied her as she had studied Agron's killers for years. A gloved hand clamped over her mouth from behind, and before she could react, darkness swallowed her. Hours, or maybe minutes, passed in a blur of pain, confusion, and cold concrete. She was restrained again, bruises already forming from the rough handling. But Cassandra was not defeated. Fear sharpened her mind rather than dulled it. She assessed her surroundings: a dimly lit warehouse, minimal exits, shadows stretching across the walls. Her captors moved with lethal efficiency, discussing the problem of Cassandra Blackwood as though she were nothing more than a file to shred. One of them sneered, pulling up a chair beside her. Funny, the great Cassandra Blackwood. Thought you could dig up the dead and live. Cassandra's jaw tightened. Pain radiated through her ribs, her arms raw where the ropes cut into her skin, but her mind was already working. Escape wasn't just hope, it was a calculation. Every sound, every flicker of light, every pattern of guard movements was logged and analyzed. Hours bled into tension. She allowed herself to feel the anger, the fear, but never submission. Every bruised limb, every ache in her body, fueled her resolve. She had been here before, she had survived before. She would survive again. At last, a quiet moment. The guards had stepped out, leaving her briefly alone. Cassandra's fingers found the frayed edges of her restraints, muscles straining, breath ragged. Her mind raced, cataloging every opportunity, every weak link in her captor's pattern. Escape wasn't just possible, it was necessary. And when it came, she would reach for the only number she had memorized. The only woman in the world whose army could descend on these monsters before they realized what hit them. But the thought of that call was heavy. She had survived the first attack, but this time, the cost could be far greater. Her eyes burned with determination. The hunters were here, but Cassandra Blackwood was not prey. Not yet. Chapter 14: Inferno and Salvation. The warehouse smelled of damp concrete and fear. Cassandra Blackwood, bruised, battered, and stripped of the illusion of safety, crouched in a shadowed corner. Her muscles ached, her ribs screamed, and yet her mind, razor-sharp and unyielding, calculated every possible move. Her captors believed her broken. They had underestimated her. But as she flexed her fingers, brushing against the frayed edges of her restraints, a flicker of hope ignited one call, one number, and the storm would descend. When the guards stepped away to speak in hushed tones, she seized the moment. Every sound, every echo in the cavernous space, mapped in her memory. Using a shard of broken metal, she sliced through her bindings, wincing at the pain but welcoming it as a spark of life. Outside, engines rumbled, low and deliberate. Then lights, flooding the warehouse in blinding white. Cassandra's heart thumped violently. Adelina Barisha emerged from the shadows, calm and precise, flanked by an unstoppable team. Her eyes locked onto Cassandra's, and the silent command in her gaze spoke louder than words. "I've got you." The captors reacted, but it was too late. Adelina moved like a shadow of death itself, strikes precise, calculated, lethal. Bodies crumpled with minimal effort, every attack orchestrated, leaving no room for error. Cassandra watched, awe and relief mingling with adrenaline. She had seen danger before, but this was artistry in motion. "Cass, move." Adelina's voice, low and commanding, pulled her back to reality. Cassandra staggered to her feet, wincing but determined, following Adelina through the chaos. Gunfire cracked against steel doors, shouts echoed, but the rescue was surgical. Every movement covered, every exit planned. Within minutes, they were outside, into the chill of the night, the black SUVs waiting like beasts in the dark. As the vehicles roared to life, Cassandra finally allowed herself a full exhale. Pain throbbed through her body, but she was alive. Safe. For now. In the back of the SUV, she met Adelina's eyes. "You," Cassandra began, voice raw, trembling. "You saved me again." Adelina's expression softened, but only slightly. "I told you, Cass. I always come. But you have to stop underestimating your enemies, and me." Cassandra's mind was already racing. Agron's killers were out there, still breathing, still planning. But for the first time, she felt the weight of alliance, protection, and strategy. Adelina's domain was dangerous, yes, but now Cassandra was not alone. The ride was silent but charged. Cassandra touched her ribs gently, feeling the fresh bruises, and then her fingers brushed the small notebook in her pocket, the ledger, the proof, the pieces of the puzzle that would bring Agron's killers down. Adelina noticed and nodded slightly. "We finish this together," she said. Every move. Every threat. No surprises. Cassandra exhaled slowly, a fragile smile breaking through. Pain, fear, adrenaline, everything rolled into one tight knot of relief and determination. The hunt was far from over, but she had survived the inferno. She had been reborn in its flames. And as the city lights reflected off the wet streets outside the SUV, Cassandra Blackwood understood the truth she had always known but never fully embraced. She was brilliant, unyielding, and now unstoppable. The storm had passed for now, but the war was just beginning. Chapter 15. Hunting Shadows. The office was quiet, sterile, the hum of computers the only background noise. Cassandra leaned over her laptop, the ledger of Agron's killers open before her. Every transfer, every movement, every faint trace of communication was cataloged, cross-referenced, and mapped. Adelina stood near the window, arms crossed, gaze sweeping the city below. "You're digging deeper than anyone has dared," she said, voice low, almost a warning. Cassandra didn't look up. "I have to. Agron didn't deserve to be erased. And these men, they're still out there. Still dangerous. I won't stop until I find them." Adelina's eyes softened, but the edge never left her voice. "Then we hunt together. But remember, every move you make leaves a mark. These men, they're not just killers, they're survivors. And they don't forgive mistakes." Cassandra's fingers flew over the keyboard, pulling together evidence from multiple databases, surveillance footage, and financial trails. Her mind was a storm of deduction, probability, and anticipation. Hours passed, and then a breakthrough, a pattern of travel, secret communications, and shell companies that hadn't been noticed before. Cassandra traced a faint line from New Haven to an abandoned warehouse in the outskirts of the city, a possible meeting place for the killers. "Here," she whispered, pointing at the screen. "This is where they converge. This is our opportunity." Adelina stepped closer, studying the screen. "We move at night. Silent, precise. No mistakes. You're brilliant, Cass, but in the field, brilliance must be measured in seconds and inches." Cassandra smiled faintly, a mix of adrenaline and respect. "Then let's be precise." They spent the next hours planning, every angle, every exit, every contingency. Cassandra's analytic mind paired with Adelina's tactical experience created a lethal synergy, a force the killers wouldn't anticipate. As night fell, the city lights shimmered like a web of potential danger. Cassandra felt the familiar surge, fear, excitement, focus, all coiling into a single sharp point of clarity. Tonight, the hunters would strike. And for the first time, Cassandra realized the thrill of the hunt was not just about justice, it was about control, survival, and power. Chapter 16. Strike in the Shadows. Night had swallowed the city, leaving only the faint glow of streetlights and the distant hum of traffic. Cassandra sat in the back of Adelina's armored SUV, laptop open on her lap, fingers flying over the keyboard. Every piece of data, every pattern, every anomaly she had discovered was mapped and cross-referenced in real time. Adelina drove, her eyes sharp, scanning the streets like a predator reading the movements of prey. "We're close," she murmured. "Stay focused, Cass. One mistake, and this is over." Cassandra nodded, tension coiling in her stomach. The warehouse she had traced the killers to loomed ahead, shadowed and foreboding. Inside, she knew, the men who had killed Agron plotted, unaware that the first threads of their unraveling were already in motion. Adelina parked the SUV several blocks away, and they moved on foot, shadows among shadows. Cassandra's pulse raced, but she had trained herself for moments like this. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat was calculated. Through a pair of binoculars, Cassandra spotted them, 3 men, heavily armed, moving inside the warehouse. She tapped her fingers on her laptop, sending encrypted signals to Adelina's earpiece. "Positions set," she whispered. 2 at the entrance, 1 patrolling the rear. Adelina's voice was calm, controlled, and deadly. "Good. On my mark." Minutes stretched, tense and silent. Then a subtle signal, a nod from Adelina, and the operation began. Silent as shadows, they moved. Cassandra's heart pounded, adrenaline sharp and focused. She watched as Adelina neutralized the first guard with precision, the man crumpling silently. Cassandra's eyes scanned the interior, tracking movements, identifying threats, calculating trajectories. She wasn't just an analyst here, she was part of a lethal team, her intelligence guiding the strike as much as Adelina's raw skill. Together, they moved like ghosts in perfect synchronization. A sharp crack, the second guard lunged, misjudging their coordination. Adelina was there instantly, taking him down with swift, controlled force. Cassandra ducked behind a crate, heart hammering, whispering through her earpiece, "Clear the rear. He won't see us coming." Minutes felt like hours, but by the time the operation ended, all three targets were incapacitated, tied securely, and restrained. Cassandra stepped into the warehouse, surveying the scene, her mind already analyzing the evidence left behind. Financial ledgers, hidden drives, coded notes, they were breadcrumbs to the larger network. Adelina approached, her gaze meeting Cassandra's. "You're brilliant," she said softly, a rare note of admiration. "Not just smart, precise. Calculated. You made this possible." Cassandra allowed herself a small smile, pain and exhaustion coiling with exhilaration. "We make a good team," she said. Outside, the city was quiet, unaware of the storm that had passed in its shadows. Cassandra looked at Adelina and realized that this hunt, this dangerous dance of intelligence and force, was just beginning. Agron's killers were only the first step. And with Adelina at her side, Cassandra felt the fire of purpose and vengeance burn brighter than ever. Chapter 17, Endgame. The city never slept, but tonight it felt like it held its breath. Cassandra sat in her office, the hum of computers and soft glow of monitors illuminating her bruised but determined face. Every scrap of evidence gathered from the warehouse, every digital breadcrumb, every financial anomaly had been pieced together into a map of Agron's killer's network. Adelina leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "They're connected to more than just Agron's murder," she said, voice low, dangerous. "Shell companies, offshore accounts, some of your colleagues could be compromised without realizing it." Cassandra didn't flinch. "Then we make sure no one gets in the way. We cut off every head of the snake. Tonight." Within the hour, they were moving. Adelina's team, a silent, unstoppable force, spread out across the city with surgical precision. Cassandra's mind was the guiding map, directing every move, identifying targets, predicting responses. The first operation hit a high-rise office in the financial district. Cassandra's team, masked and professional, entered quietly, planting evidence, extracting drives, and recording confessions from the unsuspecting operators. Each step calculated, each action precise. Meanwhile, Adelina moved with deadly elegance, neutralizing threats before they could react. One man reached for a gun, Adelina was already behind him, and the weapon clattered harmlessly to the floor. No blood, no mistakes, only results. By midnight, 3 critical nodes in the network were dismantled. Cassandra's analytical mind confirmed every asset frozen, every connection severed. Agron's killers had nowhere left to hide. Yet even in the midst of success, danger lingered. One of the hidden operatives had been tipped off. As Cassandra checked the final ledger, footsteps echoed behind her. "Looking for me?" Adelina's voice, soft but lethal, came from the shadows. The man froze, realizing too late that he had walked into a trap. Cassandra watched as Adelina's team cornered him. Every instinct told her this was the power of precision, of control, of justice executed without compromise. By dawn, the network was dismantled. Cassandra sat back, exhaustion weighing on her, but triumph warming her chest. The ledger now detailed every transaction, every killer, every hidden connection. Agron's murderers had been exposed, and the city, unknowingly, would finally breathe easier. Adelina stood beside her, quiet for a moment before speaking. "You didn't just survive, Cass. You hunted. You strategized. You won." Cassandra allowed herself a long exhale, a rare smile breaking through the tension. We won, she corrected. Together. Outside, the first light of morning touched the city, casting it in gold and silver. The war was over for now. Agron's killers were neutralized, their empire crumbled. But Cassandra knew the world she had entered, Adelina's world, was dangerous, complex, and full of shadows yet to be explored. For now, though, she allowed herself this moment. Pain, fear, and adrenaline still lingered, but so did victory. And standing there with Adelina, Cassandra Blackwood realized the truth she had always known. She was brilliant, unyielding, and unstoppable when the storm had a partner to ride it with. Chapter 18. Home Fires and Confessions. The drive to her family home felt unreal. Cassandra watched the familiar streets roll by, their charm and tranquility a stark contrast to the chaos of the past weeks. Her body still bore the marks of her ordeal, but her mind was restless, thoughts shifting to Adelina. Was she ready to step into that world, the shadows, the danger, the constant threat that came with the Berisha name? The thought of power, loyalty, and love intertwined made her chest tighten. She had survived, yes, but at what cost? And could she allow herself to open her heart to someone like Adelina, someone dangerous, magnetic, and untouchable in ways Cassandra had never experienced? By the time she reached the Blackwood estate, the late afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the manicured lawns. Brianna, now a confident and brilliant doctor, greeted her with a wide smile, all the excitement of wedding plans sparkling in her eyes. "Cass, you're finally here. I can't wait to show you the dress. Mom said you had to see it before I finalize everything." Cassandra returned the smile, though it was tinged with fatigue. "I'll come with you, Bri. Let's make this a memory." The fitting room was a whirlwind of lace, silk, and giggles. Cassandra watched her sister twirl in the mirror, radiant and unshakable. She envied Brianna's certainty, the ease with which she navigated her world. Cassandra's world was chaos and danger, but for a few hours, she allowed herself the comfort of normalcy. Meanwhile, back at the house, the front door clicked softly. Adelina Berisha stood there, calm, composed, and yet something softer in her gaze. She had come not to intrude, but to speak, to reveal truths that Cassandra might not yet be ready to hear. Emily Blackwood, Cassandra's mother, stepped into the foyer and froze, startled but not frightened. Adelina's reputation preceded her, but there was a sincerity in the way she looked at Emily that disarmed even a mother protective of her daughters. "Mrs. Blackwood," Adelina began, voice steady, respectful. "I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I need you to know. I love your daughter, and I want to be with her. I want to keep her safe, no matter the dangers she faces. I know my world is not easy, and I know she has always walked her own path, but I cannot stay away from her, and I cannot hide who I am anymore." Emily's eyes softened, searching Adelina's face, measuring the truth. "You love her?" she asked, voice gentle but firm. "I do," Adelina said without hesitation. "I would die to protect her. And I will fight to prove that she can trust me, completely." There was a pause, heavy with unspoken meaning. Emily studied the woman standing before her, weighing the risks, the love, the devotion she could see. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Cassandra deserves honesty and safety. If you can give her that, then you will have my blessing." Adelina inclined her head, relief and gratitude flickering across her sharp features. "Thank you, Mrs. Blackwood. That means more than you know." By the time Cassandra and Brianna returned from the dress fitting, Adelina was gone. Yet, the air in the house carried a new weight, a promise of protection, love, and unwavering devotion. Cassandra felt it immediately, a shiver running down her spine. She didn't speak of Adelina just yet, not aloud. But in the quiet of her childhood room, she allowed herself a moment to think, to breathe, to consider what it truly meant to step into a world where love and danger were inseparable. For the first time in weeks, Cassandra Blackwood felt the stirrings of something she had long avoided, the possibility of surrendering to trust, to love, and to the person who would walk into fire for her, Adelina Berisha. Chapter 19. Truths in the Shadows. The city skyline stretched before Cassandra as she stepped out of her car, the night air carrying both the familiar hum of life and the subtle tension that clung to Adelina's world. She hadn't seen Adelina since the brief, charged encounter at her family home. That moment had stirred feelings she wasn't ready to name, but couldn't deny. Adelina's office, perched high above the city, was sleek, minimalist, but carried the faint scent of leather and citrus, a subtle signature impossibly her. Cassandra entered, and Adelina was waiting, relaxed but alert, a quiet intensity in her posture. "You're late," Adelina said, voice calm, almost teasing, but the underlying edge reminded Cassandra why she was dangerous. Cassandra raised an eyebrow. "Traffic." She walked further in, scanning the office with sharp curiosity. This was the world Adelina built for herself, a life of order and control, separate from the shadows of her name. Adelina gestured to a sleek chair. "Sit. Tonight, I show you everything you need to see." Hours passed in a blur of files, secure drives, and painstakingly documented evidence. Adelina showed Cassandra her journey, how she had left the Berisha family's criminal operations behind, the businesses she had legally established, the military contracts she had undertaken to prove her independence. "You see this?" Adelina asked, tapping a tablet displaying a network of legitimate companies and charitable operations. "None of this touches my family's past. I've built this. Every piece of it." And yet, she paused, eyes meeting Cassandra's. "I will always carry their name. It comes with suspicion, with association. People see the surname and assume history, crime, darkness. But that is not me. Not anymore." Cassandra studied her, the tension of years spent chasing justice and uncovering the truth gnawing at her chest. "And the military? The connections, the skills, that's how you keep yourself clean while still surviving their world." Adelina smiled faintly, the shadow of a lifetime of experience crossing her features. "Exactly. I fought my battles my way. Guerrilla campaigns, intelligence operations, and I walked away. Not out of fear, but choice. That is the difference, Cassandra. I choose my life. I protect myself and I protect those I care about. You included." Cassandra's pulse quickened, not just at the danger in her words, but the sincerity behind them. "And yet, if anyone digs deep enough, my world is part of yours. The name carries weight, and I don't know if I'm ready to be part of it." Adelina's hand brushed lightly against a secure case on the table, containing evidence of her separation from her family's criminal past. "You don't have to be, Cass. You just have to trust that I've built a life beyond it. And I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe while you decide if you want in or out." Cassandra leaned back, breathing slowly, the lines between danger and desire blurring. She had seen Adelina's ruthlessness in action, the lengths she would go to protect her, but now she saw the heart behind it. A life carved from shadows into something tangible, lawful, and fiercely controlled. "You're different from what I imagined," Cassandra whispered. Adelina's gaze softened, the fierce predator giving way to something more intimate. "I hope so, Cass. Because I want you in my world. Not because you have to, but because I want you there, and I'll prove to you every day why it's worth it." The room fell silent, the hum of the city outside a distant echo. Cassandra realized, for the first time since Agron's killers had reappeared in her life, that trust was possible, even with someone like Adelina. But she also knew the dangers had not vanished. The killers remained, the shadows lingered, and her world and Adelina's were about to collide in ways she had never imagined. Yet, for the first time, Cassandra felt the stirrings of a choice, not just survival, but surrender. Chapter 20: Ghosts of the Past. Adelina Berisha's office was quiet, the kind of silence that demanded attention. Cassandra stepped inside, sensing the weight of the room, not from the furniture or the skyline beyond, but from the storm behind Adelina's eyes. "Cass," Adelina began, voice low, precise. "I've found something I didn't want to see." Cassandra's brow furrowed. "Go on." Adelina gestured to a secure screen, flicking through intercepted communications, encrypted files, and private intel her network had uncovered. Agron's murder, it wasn't him they were after. It was me. Her voice trembled, though only slightly controlled, but raw. I left the family business. I thought I left that life behind. But someone wanted to make sure I paid for my name, for my choices. My brother. He went in alone to face them. He tried to protect me. He died because of me. Cassandra's stomach tightened, anger and sorrow mixing. Adelina. Adelina held up a hand. No, let me finish. I know your instincts are screaming for justice. I need you, Cassandra. I need your mind, your skills. These people are still out there. They're dangerous, organized, and they've underestimated us. Again. Cassandra's eyes narrowed, adrenaline kicking in. You want me to help you close this chapter? Adelina's gaze was unwavering, piercing. I want you to help me end this, for Agron, for my brother, and for the people they'd kill if we don't act. You've always been the best at putting the pieces together. I need that brilliance now. Cassandra took a deep breath, scanning the files. The killers were meticulous, hiding behind layers of financial networks, false identities, and the shadows of legitimate businesses. But with Adelina's connections and her own forensic genius, Cassandra could start untangling the web. They thought they could bury this, Adelina continued, both literally and figuratively. But they didn't know who they were facing. Her voice softened as she stepped closer. And neither did they know that I have you on my side. Cassandra felt a shiver, not of fear, but of recognition. These were the stakes she thrived on, the puzzles she lived for. But this wasn't just a case, it was personal, tied to the woman who had shown her both danger and desire. I'll help, Cassandra said, her voice steady, resolute. But we do this smart, calculated. No mistakes, no assumptions. And we end it, Adelina. For good. Adelina's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. That's why I asked for you, Cass. I trust no one else. We start tonight. Outside, the city lights shimmered like stars reflected on water. Inside, two forces, brilliant, unyielding, and bound by trust and danger, prepared to close a chapter that had haunted them both. And, for Cassandra Blackwood, the thrill of the hunt, the rush of intellect, and the pull of the woman standing before her promised a reckoning that was as much about justice as it was about the storm she couldn't resist. Chapter 21. The Hunt Begins. Cassandra stood in the command room, screens flickering with data, maps, and live feeds. Adelina's team moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine, each member executing their role flawlessly. But it was Adelina and Cassandra in the center, the minds orchestrating the takedown. Here, Cassandra said, pointing to a pattern in the financial transfers and travel records. They're operating out of 3 fronts. 2 are decoys, 1 is the real location. If we hit the wrong one first, they'll scatter. Adelina's eyes gleamed with that dangerous calm Cassandra had learned to recognize. Then we go surgical. I need you on intel, Cass. Your analysis gives me the edge. Hours passed in a blur of strategizing, calls, and silent exchanges. Cassandra felt the familiar thrill of adrenaline mixed with the tension of knowing lives, including her own, were on the line. Every movement, every decision mattered. Finally, they had the target, a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Adelina's team moved out first, silent as shadows, while Cassandra monitored from the van every camera feed, every comm link her responsibility. Then the first confrontation. Cassandra watched the screen as armed figures emerged from hidden rooms, expecting easy prey. But Adelina's tactical squad was faster, cleaner, no hesitation, no mercy. Cassandra, Adelina's voice crackled through the earpiece, calm but commanding, get me the door codes and floor layout. Cassandra's fingers flew over the keyboard, bypassing encrypted locks, tracking heat signatures. She felt the familiar rush, the same one that had made her the best in her field, the same one that now could save lives. Gunfire erupted, muffled through the van's audio feed, as Adelina's team subdued the first wave. Cassandra held her breath with every step they took, knowing the enemy would fight, but also knowing they had underestimated the combination of Adelina's force and Cassandra's intelligence. Minutes felt like hours. Then the final confrontation, the mastermind behind Agron's murder, cornered, desperate, and dangerous. Cassandra guided Adelina in real time, giving every weak point, every escape route. "You're cornered," Cassandra whispered through the calms, voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "No way out. End it clean." Adelina's presence on the screen was a study in lethal grace. Every movement precise, every strike calculated. Within moments, the threat was neutralized, captured, or eliminated, the city's shadows slightly safer for now. Back in the command van, Cassandra exhaled, her shoulders slumping. She glanced at Adelina, who had returned moments later, bruised but unbroken, a victorious glint in her storm-gray eyes. "Beautiful work, Cass," Adelina said softly, coming to stand beside her. "We closed the chapter. For Agron, for my brother, and for us." Cassandra let herself relax, finally, just a little. "It's done," she said, almost in disbelief. "Finally." Adelina's hand brushed against hers, a silent affirmation. "Dangerous. Powerful. Unstoppable. And entirely devoted to her." Cassandra felt the pull, part respect, part attraction, part trust that had been forged in fire. Outside, the city carried on, oblivious to the lives that had just been saved, the darkness that had just been shattered. Inside, Cassandra and Adelina shared a moment of quiet triumph, a storm weathered together, and a future that was no longer just about survival, but about trust, loyalty, and perhaps love. Chapter 22, After the Storm. The night had settled over the city like a velvet cloak, softening the edges of the chaos that had raged just hours before. Cassandra stepped into Adelina's penthouse, the view from the floor-to-ceiling windows taking in the city lights. Every shimmer reminded her that life went on even when the shadows had been at their darkest. Adelina was already there, leaning against the sleek railing, arms crossed, storm-gray eyes scanning the skyline. She turned as Cassandra entered, and for a heartbeat, the two simply looked at each other, the weight of adrenaline and survival lingering between them. "You're quiet," Adelina said softly, her voice carrying the undercurrent of amusement that made Cassandra's pulse quicken. "I'm processing," Cassandra admitted, her tone carefully measured. "All of it. The operation. The danger. You." Her words trailed off. She wasn't ready to say exactly what she felt, but she knew it was real. Adelina stepped closer, her presence magnetic and steady, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of feelings inside Cassandra. "I know what you're thinking," she said gently. "And I won't push. But you should know. I've felt this too. Since the first moment we met." Cassandra's chest tightened. She wanted to speak, to articulate the pull, the confusion, the thrill of being so close to someone who was both danger and sanctuary. She faltered, then exhaled. "I don't trust easily. You know that. But I also know what I feel. And it's not fear." Adelina's eyes softened, the steel tempered by warmth. "Good. Because what I feel for you isn't just desire. It's connection. And I'll wait as long as you need to figure out what that means." Cassandra swallowed, the tension between caution and longing pressing against her ribs. "You've saved me more times than I can count. And you've trusted me with your world. That's not easy to accept." Adelina reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from Cassandra's face, her fingers lingering near her cheek. "Then let's start there. Trust. Slowly. No expectations. No assumptions. Just us, figuring it out together." Cassandra's breath hitched at the contact, at the closeness, at the undeniable truth of it. She wanted this. In every way, she was allowed to want someone like Adelina. Dangerous. Powerful. Unflinchingly honest in her devotion. She stepped closer, closing the distance, letting herself feel the pull without surrendering completely. "We'll see," she murmured, a faint, teasing smile tugging at her lips. Adelina chuckled softly, low and rich, a sound that sent shivers down Cassandra's spine. "We will," she agreed. "But just know, I'm not going anywhere. Not now. Not ever." Outside, the city hummed quietly, oblivious to the battles fought, the lives saved, and the hearts daring to beat for someone else. Inside, Cassandra and Adelina stood close, the world outside fading. For now, survival was no longer the only thrill. They had each other, a fragile, powerful bond forged in fire, and the beginnings of something neither had expected, but both knew they couldn't ignore. Cassandra took a deep breath, feeling the mix of caution and yearning, and finally allowed herself a thought she hadn't dared until now. Maybe some risks were worth taking. Chapter 23. The First Kiss. For days, Adelina made her presence known, not with grand gestures, but with deliberate, subtle actions that spoke louder than words. A message in the morning, coffee? I'll be there in 10. A carefully wrapped file left on Cassandra's desk, one she had been hunting for weeks. A quiet knock at the door when Cassandra returned from late meetings, the soft reassurance of her presence. Cassandra felt it before she allowed herself to acknowledge it, the pull, the trust slowly threading through the tension she'd carried for months. Every time Adelina appeared, it wasn't just the danger or the thrill, it was the calm she brought, a reminder that some battles were worth trusting someone for. That evening, Cassandra stayed late at the lab, scanning the latest data on Argon's network. The case was closing, but her mind wandered. A knock at the glass door broke her concentration, and she looked up to see Adelina leaning casually against the frame, eyes soft but sharp, as if she could read every thought Cassandra tried to hide. "You're still here," Adelina said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Working too hard." "Again." "I'm closing the last threads," Cassandra replied, trying to maintain her composure, though her heart betrayed her. "Can't leave loose ends." Adelina stepped inside, the faint scent of citrus and leather enveloping Cassandra. "You don't have to do it alone," she said softly, placing a hand near Cassandra's laptop, but not touching. "I can help. You know that." Cassandra's eyes met hers, storm gray locking with storm green. "I know," she whispered, and for the first time, she allowed herself to lean back against the counter, to not be on guard, to just feel. Adelina closed the distance slowly, deliberately, giving Cassandra every moment to pull away if she chose. But Cassandra didn't. Instead, she let herself feel the warmth, the safety, the quiet insistence of trust. Cassandra started, then stopped, words failing her. Adelina tilted her head, reading the hesitation, the longing, the fear. "Shoo," Adelina murmured, and it was a caress in itself. She closed the gap, letting their breaths mingle, and in that suspended moment, she kissed Cassandra. Tender at first, exploratory, a question that Cassandra didn't need to answer with words. Then, as if every restraint Cassandra had built melted away, she returned the kiss, hands finding their way to Adelina's shoulders, then sliding down her arms. The kiss deepened, no urgency, just an exquisite acknowledgement of the trust and pull that had been building for weeks. When they finally broke apart, Cassandra's forehead rested against Adelina's, breaths mingling, hearts racing in synchrony. "I trust you," Cassandra whispered, the words both a confession and a promise. "And I you," Adelina replied, a gentle smile playing on her lips. "Every day, Cass. Every day, I'll prove it." Outside, the city carried on, oblivious to the quiet intimacy that had formed in a lab lined with screens and data. Inside, two women stood tethered by trust, desire, and the promise of something neither had dared to name until now. Cassandra closed her eyes, allowing herself to believe, even if just for a moment, that some risks, like falling for Adelina, were worth taking. Chapter 24. Beneath the Armor. The city had a new rhythm now, one that Cassandra hadn't realized she'd been waiting for. Every morning, she woke to a message from Adelina, sometimes a playful meme, sometimes a simple coffee, and with each one, the tension she carried for years loosened just a fraction. Adelina showed her a side of life Cassandra had only glimpsed in fleeting moments, the ease of laughter over breakfast at a tiny cafe tucked away from the city's hum, the thrill of riding bikes through a sunlit park, or dancing in Adelina's apartment to music that had no name, but made them both laugh until they collapsed on the floor, breathless. Cassandra often caught herself staring at Adelina mid-laugh, at the tilt of her head, the ease of her smile, the way her storm-gray eyes softened when she looked at her. It was disarming, magnetic, and entirely unexpected. Wait, you actually like rom-coms? Cassandra asked one evening as they shared a small dessert at a dimly lit rooftop bistro, the city lights sprawling beneath them. Adelina laughed, a rich, unrestrained sound. Only with the right company, she teased, leaning forward. Besides, don't act like you don't enjoy the occasional predictable happy ending. Cassandra's cheeks warmed. Maybe sometimes, she admitted, unwilling to fully confess how much she loved the comfort, the normalcy, the human side of Adelina that few ever saw. They walked through the streets afterward, hands brushing, then entwining naturally, as if the world outside had simply ceased to exist. Cassandra was aware of every heartbeat, every small gesture, every unspoken word. Adelina pulled her into a quiet alcove, the glow of a single street lamp casting soft shadows across her face. "You're different when you're with me," she murmured. "Not tense. Not calculating. Just you." Cassandra swallowed, heart hammering. "And you're nothing like I expected. Funny. Warm. Terrifying and irresistible, but also ordinary in the best way. And I can't stop thinking about you." Adelina's hand found Cassandra's cheek, thumb brushing gently, as if to etch the moment into memory. "Then don't fight it," she whispered. "Fall. Slowly. Let it happen." Cassandra laughed softly, a sound she hadn't made in months outside of her lab, leaning into the warmth and ease of Adelina's presence. "You make it easy," she admitted. "Too easy." Adelina grinned, that dangerous sparkle tempered by tenderness. "Good. That's the point. Life is messy, Cass. I want you to know the other side too, the part where you can breathe, laugh, and just be." And in that moment, Cassandra realized she was already falling deeply, irrevocably, into the world Adelina had built for her, one layer of danger peeled back to reveal something far more powerful: love. Chapter 25. A Date to Remember. Cassandra was late leaving the lab, papers scattered across her desk, screens blinking with the remnants of unfinished cases. Her phone buzzed, a simple message from Adelina: "Check your door before you leave." Curious, Cassandra walked to her apartment, finding a small envelope taped to her door. Inside was a handwritten note: "Meet me at 7. Dress for the evening. I've enlisted help." Her heart skipped. Adelina had enlisted help? She read the note twice, imagining what that could possibly mean. That evening, Cassandra found herself seated at a quiet rooftop restaurant, the city's skyline ablaze with lights. She had no idea what Adelina had planned, but the anticipation alone was enough to make her pulse race. When Adelina appeared, she was breathtaking, as always, but tonight, there was an extra gleam in her eyes. "Ready?" she asked, her voice low and teasing. "Doesn't feel like I have a choice," Cassandra replied, smirking despite herself. Adelina grinned, leading her to the table. And there, to Cassandra's surprise, sat her sister, Brianna, grinning from ear to ear. "Adelina, you actually went to the trouble," Cassandra started, eyes wide. "I had help," Adelina interrupted, a wicked sparkle in her storm-gray eyes. "Your sister's very persuasive." Brianna laughed. "I just suggested a few things. And, well, I may have let slip something from your past." Cassandra froze. "What?" Adelina leaned forward, her grin wicked. "Apparently, the night you thought you were watching a rom-com but discovered otherwise?" Cassandra's face went bright red. "Brie, you didn't." Brianna shrugged, still grinning. "I may have, just a little. But it's hilarious." Adelina laughed, deep and genuine, the sound rolling over Cassandra like warmth. "I promise, Cass, that memory will haunt me forever. But don't worry, I like every side of you." Cassandra blinked, her heart thundering at the combination of teasing and care. She opened her mouth to respond, but Adelina's expression suddenly shifted. Her eyes softened, the teasing gone, replaced with something profound, raw. "Cassandra," she whispered, reaching across the table, taking Cassandra's hand in hers. "I've shown you the world I live in, dangerous, chaotic, but I want you to know what I feel. What I feel for you." And I'm asking, will you be my girlfriend? Cassandra's breath hitched. The city around them seemed to pause. Her mind raced, the danger, the trust, the slow unraveling of her heart. And then, all at once, she realized there was no hesitation, no doubt. Yes, she whispered, her voice trembling yet certain. Yes, Adelina. Adelina's smile broke into full warmth, and she leaned across the table, capturing Cassandra's lips in a kiss that was tender, thrilling, and filled with promise. For a moment, nothing else existed, no danger, no past, no enemies, just the two of them, falling into something dangerously, exquisitely real. Brianna cheered quietly from the side, and Cassandra couldn't help laughing into the kiss, the moment perfect in its messy, chaotic, human way. When they finally pulled back, Adelina rested her forehead against Cassandra's. "I'll protect you," she murmured. "In every way. You just have to trust me." Cassandra smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. "I do," she said. "I trust you." And in that rooftop glow, with laughter and city lights and storm gray eyes locking onto hers, Cassandra Blackwood realized some risks, the most dangerous and thrilling ones, were worth taking. Chapter 26. The Night We Belong. The city lights glittered like a promise as Cassandra left her office, the weight of the day falling away with every step toward Adelina's sleek, black car waiting outside. Her pulse quickened, not from the work she had left behind, but from the thought of the night ahead. Tonight, it wasn't danger, it wasn't cases, it wasn't enemies, it was them. Adelina greeted her with that familiar smirk, but it softened as she reached out to tuck a loose strand of Cassandra's hair behind her ear. "You look stunning," she said, her voice low, intimate, sending shivers down Cassandra's spine. "Stop it," Cassandra said, but she didn't pull away. She couldn't. Not from this woman, not now. They drove through the city, the windows down, the night air carrying the scent of wet asphalt and distant gardens. Music played softly, a selection Adelina had clearly chosen with care, something both grounding and provocative. At a quiet rooftop lounge, Adelina led Cassandra to a secluded table. Candles flickered, the city sprawled endlessly beneath them, and for the first time, Cassandra allowed herself to fully breathe. Adelina was by her side, not a step ahead or behind, but here, in this moment, present, attentive, and entirely devoted. "You're good at making the impossible feel safe," Cassandra said, smiling softly. Adelina reached across the table, fingers brushing Cassandra's hand, thumbs stroking her knuckles. "I want to make every night like this feel safe, even if the world wants to remind you it isn't." Dinner passed with laughter, teasing, quiet confessions of small fears, and shared joys. Adelina revealed her love of simple things, her favorite coffee, the way she could lose herself in a book, how she secretly adored cheesy romantic movies. Cassandra laughed, feeling herself falling further into her warmth, her humor, her humanity. Afterward, they walked through the city streets, hands intertwined, footsteps syncing with a rhythm only they shared. When they reached Adelina's apartment, the glow of the city spilling across the floor, Cassandra paused. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice soft, uncertain. Adelina's hands framed her face, thumbs brushing over her cheekbones. "About what?" "This, us. About letting myself," Cassandra swallowed, "fall." Adelina smiled, a slow, steadying smile that made Cassandra's knees feel weak. "About this, about me?" She leaned in, lips brushing against Cassandra's ear. "I've been waiting my whole life for you, Cass. Trust me. Tonight, we belong." And with that, they kissed. Not rushed, not demanding, but deep, explorative, savoring the connection they had built, the trust that had grown through danger, laughter, and countless small, deliberate gestures. Cassandra's hands roamed over Adelina's back, feeling the strength, the warmth, the reassurance. Adelina's hands traced the lines of Cassandra's jaw, neck, and shoulders, grounding her, claiming her, yet tenderly, lovingly. Hours later, wrapped in the quiet intimacy of Adelina's apartment, they explored each other slowly, deliberately. Not a hurried surrender, but a careful, sacred intertwining, where every touch, every sigh, every whispered name was a declaration, a promise, a trust. Cassandra marveled at how natural it felt, how safe, how entirely right. By dawn, they lay entwined, the city waking beneath them, and Cassandra knew she had found a rare and precious thing, not just love, but sanctuary in the storm. Adelina pressed a soft kiss to her temple. No matter what comes, Cass, we face it together. Cassandra rested her head against Adelina's chest, letting the steady beat of her heart calm the echoes of past danger. Together, she whispered, closing her eyes, finally letting herself belong. Epilogue: Threads of Fire. The sun dipped low over the city, painting the skyline in molten gold and rose. Cassandra stood on the balcony of Adelina's apartment, the wind tugging gently at her hair, and watched the light dance across the glass towers. Beside her, Adelina's hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally, a quiet anchor in a world that had once been anything but safe. "It's beautiful," Cassandra murmured, leaning into her warmth. Adelina's lips brushed against her temple in a soft, lingering kiss. "Not as beautiful as you," she whispered. "And not as perfect as this moment." Cassandra smiled, heartful. She thought back over the whirlwind of the past months, the danger, the secrets, the revelations, the fear, but also the laughter, the tenderness, the unwavering presence of the woman who had saved her in more ways than one. Adelina turned, cupping Cassandra's face, eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made the world hush around them. "You've been brilliant, Cass. In everything you do. And now, you've let me in. I've never been so alive, so at home." Cassandra's pulse quickened, every nerve alight with warmth and longing. "I don't know how I ever lived without you," she admitted, voice trembling slightly. "You make everything brighter. Even the dark corners I thought I had to face alone." Then Adelina leaned in, slow, deliberate, her lips finding Cassandra's in a kiss that was all promise and fire, all softness and surrender. It was the kiss that sealed their world, a world where they were both safe and alive, together. Cassandra felt the steady pull of desire and tenderness entwined, a perfect balance that made her heart ache with happiness. When they parted, just lightly, Cassandra rested her forehead against Adelina's, breathing in the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. "So, what now?" she whispered, smiling. Adelina grinned, that magnetic, dangerous, irresistible smile that had first drawn her in. Now we live. We laugh. We love. And we don't let anything or anyone steal this from us." Cassandra laughed softly, the sound ringing with relief and joy, and tightened her grip on Adelina's hand. "I like that plan." They watched the city together, quiet in the moment, hearts aligned, the past finally settled, the future wide and open. And in the golden light of evening, they shared another kiss, this one gentle, lingering, the kind that promises 1,000 tomorrows. For Cassandra Blackwood, brilliant, fierce, and untouchable, and Adelina Barisha, commanding, magnetic, and loyal, the world had shifted. Danger may exist beyond these walls, but here, in each other's arms, they were invincible. The night fell softly, stars appearing one by one, and with it, a life threaded with fire, passion, and love, perfect, unbroken, theirs. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe and like this video and follow me for more stories. You are always welcome here, and leave me a comment or a thumbs up, just letting me know if you like the story and would like more, or is there perhaps an idea that you would like to share or let me write for you.